This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn and I are talking about crafting a compelling character arc. So we are inspired by Dickens' A Christmas Carol. If you heard that episode, we talk about Scrooge's arc. Sorry about that.
Notification.
Yeah. We talk about Scrooge's arc at some length. So let's talk about crafting a character arc more generally and in our own works and what we've learned.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about using Scrooge as a jumping off point is his arc is very dramatic. You go from, like you said, that anti-hero to hero arc. So we have a very strong change, right? And not everyone has that kind of strength of change, right? Character arc doesn't have to be from villain to hero or from evil to good, right? But it does have to change. There has to be a character movement. You can't stay the same person. As your protagonist cannot stay the same person from the beginning of the book to the end. And I do think that that has to be an intrinsic, like, character trait, thing that you have worked on within yourself. It can't just be that their situation has changed or that their, life has changed, but that they intrinsically within themselves have shifted in some dramatic way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And one of the tricks of building an effective character arc that I see a lot of writers struggle with is how to express on the page that this shift has occurred, especially when it happens with the climax or as a result of the climax. And so you don't have much room at the end of your book to create that shift, to communicate it to the reader. And one of the things that's so great about A Christmas Carol is that everything is outward and it's writ large. So it's so easy to communicate what that shift is, the change from miser to someone who is generous of spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So when we are dealing with our stories and that change isn't going to be, it might be equally significant and dramatic, but not as outwardly apparent. It might be more nuanced or subtle. It might be something like discovering courage within, whatever. How do we communicate that to the reader?
That's the trick, right? That's the trick. I think this is that don't leave it till the climax, right? And this is something that reading A Christmas Carol, having it external, really helped me to kind of visualize that arc a lot better. And sometimes I think I bury the clues or the markers of the change so deeply within my narrative that even, you might have trouble picking it out. And I think allowing that to float to the surface, having scenes where you show the incremental process of change or having a character that helps demonstrate that change can help to bring it to the forefront without, making it the like glaring if you don't want it to be super external. So I feel like allowing yourself the tools to demonstrate the change was something I took away from A Christmas Carol.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you said, don't wait until the climax. In A Christmas Carol, we see the shift starting to occur with the first Spirit of Christmas Past, where Scrooge has a thought of saying something to Cratchit, of being nice, giving a little word of encouragement. And so by the time he wakes up on Christmas morning and it's not too late and he's buying turkeys and all this kind of stuff, we believe the change, it's been established as it's happening and it's been building, it's been mounting. And I don't know if there's a B, but in going to our own works, it's a great takeaway to say, okay, this is the change I need to show at the end of my character arc. but what is the foundation for that change? And how do I develop that change as we get to the end of the book, to the climax, or to the other side of the climax?
Yeah. I like also the idea of being able to label it so clearly. Like he went from miser to generous in spirit. Like I really feel I have this like burning desire now to go back to my work and try and find like a descriptor to like give me a one word on either end. Like how has she shifted this personality trait to that personality or character trait, however you want to say it. Because I feel like that's such a good guidepost to find those markers. And I don't know that I necessarily have that very strong right now, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think going to this sort of literature, like A Christmas Carol, or going to some of the better children's literature is a really useful thing to study, because things do tend to be a little more on the surface and a little less nuanced. And I was thinking of how apprentice stories really lay out a journey for us of this character evolution from novice to, ready to enter the battle. They aren't a master yet at the end of that arc, but Kung Fu Panda came to mind, right? And at the very beginning, he has no self-confidence. He doesn't fit in his own family because he was adopted by geese, like he can't get into the palace courtyard to see the naming, right? He doesn't belong. He shouldn't be where he ends up. And so he's constantly battling this sense of, why am I here? What am I doing here? I don't belong here. I haven't earned this. I'm not the right one to be here. But we see him get better and better over his journey as he starts developing some skills, as Master Sifu starts to show a little bit of faith and encouragement in him, as the others start, hazing him a little less kind of stuff, because he's starting to earn his place. And when he finally gets the message of transformation during the climax, there's like this magic scroll that, Tiger is after or whatever. And he pulls the scroll open and it's blank.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Huh? And then he realizes the scroll is gold and he's seeing his own reflection. So his arc, that huge dramatic shift, is to believe in himself. Right? So whether he fits in or not, whether other people think he's earned his position or not, whether anyone thinks he can fight this tiger or not, he needs to believe in himself.
Yeah.
Is 2024 the year you take your writing to the next level? Would you like to join a select group of fellow writers to expand your craft knowledge while working on your novel? Do you want to see your page count growing week by week and have ongoing access to an expert writing coach? New sessions of group coaching are starting soon after the new year. Schedule your free discovery call with me today. I'd love to meet you and answer any questions you have about group coaching. Go to wordessential.com/fiction coaching to schedule your call today. P.S. Not a joiner? I have individual coaching spots opening up in 2024 as well. Schedule that free discovery call with me at wordessential.com/fiction coaching. Right. So when we look at something like that, where, I can readily identify what the shift is in the character, then I can back analyze the story and watch the progression and see how it's building. And then I can look at my own stories, figure out what I want that change to be, and then start thinking about, how can I communicate that through the plot situations, through the relationships with other characters, through moments of growth that the character has, internal growth and external growth, to build up to that major shift so that the reader gets it.
Yeah. And you get to see the tools of the other characters, the way they interact with him, the way that he has a master who doesn't believe in him initially, right? All kind of elevate that to where you can see that struggle along the way. And I think that's, I'm now I want to go back to my own story. Like thinking through these elements, like, what do I have that pushes that envelope? Where am I challenging that growth? Who is questioning my character in a way that forces her to, interact with that change or interact with that growth so that she can actually move forward rather than staying stagnant. And in A Christmas Carol, it's the three ghosts. You get that tension with the ghosts, and so you get to see the movement forward. The scenes within them, of course, obviously, but the ghosts are the ones that move that character arc. You can see him interacting with them in a way that is like sandpaper, right? He's getting molded into who he needs to be. And I love the Kung Fu Panda example because, like you said, it's so surface and yet not, because it's a different change. It's, not having confidence in yourself to having that confidence, and that the confidence is power, which is very different than miser to generous. A little less moral.
Yeah. 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 I think another thing that helps us is remembering to relate our character arc to our plot arc, thinking about my own historical Saving Annabelle. I know there were times where I said, okay, at the end of the book, my protagonist needs to do this. What do I need to show the reader what do I need to show us before she gets to the climax to show she's prepared and competent mentally, emotionally, physically to go through that climax? And so there's a moment where her horse takes a fall and is lame, and she has to handle that situation. And there's a moment where she stands up to her father, and then has to deal with the consequences of that. And there's a moment where she leaves home and is kind of mentored by a woman who's an outcast from the village and things like that. And so those are all significant to the plot, but they're also significant to the character arc. Like, she could never be the hero in the climax if she hadn't some time before that stood up to her father, right? If she hadn't shown she could handle the tragic loss of her beloved horse, if she hadn't shown, developed some connection and skills outside of her home and things like that. So we have to remember, even though we talk about character arc and plot arc as separate entities quite often, that they're wed and they work together constantly.
Yeah. The plot is refining your character into who they need to be. So.
Right. Yes. And each shift that those events create in your character should be designed to support and build us toward that major shift at the end of the character arc, the thematic shift.
And it doesn't need to be a linear line. They can have plot things where their character arc actually fails, right? Where they become worse, maybe, or they suffer a setback, or in some way, something that they would then react to at the end with I don't want to go back to that again. I don't want to do that again. Kind of a situation. I think we so often want to see our characters just grow, and we forget that sometimes, trials and tribulations, things that happen, problems and suffering can grow the character in ways that are different, and more powerful.
Right.
Question mark?
Well, yeah, and growth is a process, and it's often a painful process.
Mhm.
Think of growing pains. So it isn't, as you said, it's not always linear, and we do take our lumps and bumps along the way and such. And you don't want it to be too easy, but you also don't want it to be failure, 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 shining
Right.
success.
Right. I think of that more in the plot arc. Like
Mm-hmm.
they'll have successes, they'll have failures, sure. But like as a character, your internal arc too, sometimes you can do things that you are disgusted by, or that you wish you'd never done, or that you suffer shame or guilt because of. And
Mm-hmm.
that too is a powerful motivator for change. So you may stick them in a situation and they may react the wrong way. So that then in the climax, when they react the correct way, the reader says, okay, I see why. And it's greater stakes, right? In the climax versus the first one. But if, you want them to have a family situation or something, and the first time she just crushes her sister's spirit, but in the end she doesn't, and she's able to lift that relationship up, then we see why that would be the choice that she would make, because she's already suffered the consequences of one mistake. So
Mm-hmm.
remembering that there's growth in that sense as well. In the
Right.
internal, you can make decisions that are not necessarily plot bad,
Yeah.
but can be character suffering
Mm-hmm.
internally.
Right. Well, and okay, a scene from Kung Fu Panda is coming to mind where
Go watch Kung Fu Panda.
I know. Yeah, if you go just enjoy. Just go enjoy. Um, he's so depressed that his heroes think he's a big fat failure and has no business being there. And so he goes into the kitchen and he's eating everything in sight. And he starts going after this box of cookies or something way on the top shelves. And Sifu catches him and he's like, oh no. And it's just epic failure. But actually, in this brilliant twist, Sifu sees it as an opportunity and starts training him with food.
He's a food motivated panda. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's taking a failing and flipping it for good. Yeah.
Yes, and it wasn't Panda who saw that opportunity. And had it been one of the other characters, they probably would have just belittled him for it and he would have walked away in shame, right? But the writers saw this like brilliant, funny, tender moment. It's really quite tender when you think of how mortified Panda is to be caught stress eating, feeding
and it's
his
something we can all relate to.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
It is funny. I know. So many ways to shape our characters' journeys and
exactly
remember the different tools we have at our disposal, including the plot and the supporting characters, and laying the foundation, building up toward that transformation. My newsletter, A Room Full of Books and Pencils, is growing every week with new reflections, writing tips, and transcripts of the podcast. It's also where I make announcements about things like upcoming writing workshops and coaching sessions. Check out A Room Full of Books and Pencils at booksandpencils.substack.com. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.